Okay, I'm Mike Ridley, editor of The Messenger, and I'm here at Mohegan Manor with a couple of Baldwinsville World War II veterans, and they're going to talk to us and tell us a little bit about what they remember about that time. Why don't you introduce yourself?
It's Phil Maratta. Ed Assenheimer.
Okay, and I guess we'll just start out. Phil, you can just tell us where you served and how you got in.
Well, I went into service in 1943. I was too young when the war broke out to go in, so I had to wait till I got drafted. And they didn't take me till March of 43. Then I hit a few outfits here and there, jumped around. Then I got in the 87th Division down in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, in the early part of 45. By the November of 45, was it 45? No, it was 44. And then we went to England, Thanksgiving Day, November of 44. Yeah, what's 44, right. And then we went over across the channel on LSTs and went up the Seine River to Rouen, and then from there we went down to Metz, started our combat there in Metz, and stayed there a little while. Then we went over into Germany they were just jumping us here and there. We were in Luxembourg in December of 45 when the Bulge broke out, and that's how we ended up going at Christmas Day. We were on our way to the Bulge. And then we were with the 3rd Army, Patton, and we stayed with him, spearheaded I was at the 3rd Army, I think, and we ended up in Czechoslovakia when they surrendered there in Europe. It was in the artillery, and first I was in the communications section, which we used to, or a 105 howitzer battery, and we used to supply the phone lines to the guns for the coordinates of the firing. And then I also, for a while, I handled ammunition, ammunition for the guns, which they used to be packed 2 of them in a box, and they weighed about anywhere from 100 to 105 pounds each. Well, I was young at that time. It was nothing to pick one of them up.
Yeah.
And we got one time there in the Bulge, we got counterattacked with a group of the Germans there, and we worked all night long just hauling the ammunition back up to the guns. But outside of that, I didn't do very much. I was just a private all the way through, and nothing much, but I still was in there.
Yeah.
Did my part there.
How long were you in combat?
Well, our division went in, we were for 90 straight days and never got a relief for that. And they claimed that was a record at that time. I don't know what it was true or not. But we were one of the last divisions, and then when the war ended, we got sent back. They sent 3 divisions back that were on their way to the Pacific. But and then they gave us 30-day furloughs, and by the time I was home when the Japanese surrendered. And then we went to Fort Benning, Georgia, and they after replenishing all our troops and everything, bringing our division up to par there, they decided to deactivate the outfit, and we were the first division to be deactivated after World War II.
When was that, approximately?
In 1940, around September of 45, because there was a Fort Benning, and I stayed. From there, they shipped me to Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania, until I got they lowered to my points, and I got out in January of 46.
Come back to Baldwinsville afterwards? Or?
No, I just stayed around. I'm not originally from here,
Okay.
but I was been here about 20 years now.
Okay.
But,
Ed, you were, what unit were you in?
Oh, I was a pilot in the Air Force. And my overseas work was with the 8th Air Force in England during the 1943 and 1944. I spent 11 months over there. I would say the most memorable experience I had was D-Day. I flew 2 missions on D-Day. The first mission, the clouds obscured the view, and we had to bomb elsewhere. But late afternoon, they scheduled another raid for our group, and I got in on that, and I went strictly as an observer. Now, I did not pilot a plane that one, and it's the best trip I ever had, because the clouds had disappeared over the bay, and I saw nothing but ships, airplanes and ships going into the coast in France. And I said at that time, when I come home, that I could walk from England to France one boat at a time, one step on each, and it was fantastic. And what a lot of people never realized about the invasion, Germany had no aircraft over the invasion whatsoever. I think there was 2 fighters got in where we had 8,000 planes over it. The Germans only got 2 fighters, and both of those were shot down. But they took a circle of about 175 miles, and for 2 or 3 weeks they bombed the German airports and bombed them and bombed them. And then starting the night before, our fighters went over and wouldn't let any of their fighters off the ground. And this a lot of people just don't realize.
Yeah.
There was no fighters.
What kind of a plane were you piloting?
I flew B-17s. I originally went over as a co-pilot, and I flew 6 raids as a co-pilot. And then I checked out, and they gave me a new crew, and I flew 25 raids as a pilot. Probably as good a raid was, I'm not sure, it was either the first or second raid on Berlin. I was in the lead group, the lead squadron, and the lead division, and we were the first planes over Berlin. But what was so thrilling about it was when we turned around to come home, we flew just 180 degrees, and we watched the rest of the 8th Air Force coming in, and we passed our planes going in there for 45 minutes to bomb Berlin. This is, I mean, just flying away from the target and then seeing all these planes coming in after you is really fantastic.
Now is this a picture here of the...
That's a picture of a plane from my squadron, my group in England. And the original painting is down in the Smithsonian Institute. And I am not in the plane as it's depicted, but I have flown that airplane myself.
Now, what was your experience prior to going in the service? What led you toward becoming a pilot?
Well, I don't know. When the war started, we all knew it was. I was there within 2 weeks to join up. But I had to take tests, and I passed all the tests to get into the Air Force, but I failed the physical for high blood pressure. So I went home and I doctored my blood pressure for 3 weeks, 3 months, and then finally got in. Then that got you into pilot training, and then from there it just keeps stepping up.
How long were you in training?
Oh, 9 months. Now, as I say, that's pilot training, and it takes you about 9 months to get through pilot training. Then they send you out, and they put you together with a crew, and then there's a couple more months as a crew. And then we were shipped overseas.
And you were stationed in England the whole time?
England for 11 months. Actually, I came home just a month after the invasion, the D-Day. And I instructed here in the States for the next 7, 8, 9 months, and then I put in to go on B-29s, and that's where I was when the war ended.
Okay. Did you ever get sent out on that, or?
No, I was still in Albuquerque, New Mexico when the war ended, and I was just checking out B-29s. That's what I went there for.
What do you remember about Europe from the perspective that you were seeing it from?
Well, you really don't notice too much on the ground. We were flying 21, 22, 3,000 feet, and you have a lot of your planes around you, your B-17s, you have your fighters around you, and this is where your attention is drawn to. You're looking for the enemy, you're looking for flak. But occasionally we'd see the ground. I saw the ground one time coming home on a raid, and I was knocked out of formation, and over Belgium I dropped down to the deck so they couldn't shoot at me. And I'm coming down through was it Brussels in Belgium, and I dropped right down over the city so the guns couldn't shoot at me. And I can remember I was actually looking up at some of the apartment houses there where they had guns on the roof, but they couldn't get the guns to shoot at me.
Jeez. It's a pretty big plane to be taken down that way.
Well, as I say, it was all unexpected for them, so I'm very lucky. Coming out, one of the things that I remember, coming away from the coast on one raid, up ahead of me I noticed a 17 pulling out of formation, and he had one engine fender. Then he pulled out a little further, and I told my crew that we're going to follow him in case he needed some help. And we followed him out. We were probably 15 miles off the coast of Belgium. And this fella feathered 2 engines, and then he made a landing in the ocean, which was very calm at the time. And he made a very beautiful landing. 5 men come out each side of the plane. They brought their dinghies out. 5 men got in each. One went around and they tied the 2 together. And I kept circling over the dinghies for about 3.5 to 4 minutes. And my radio man kept sending in a signal for the English to pick up. And after, as I say, about 4 minutes, I climbed up and I headed back for England. And within about 2.5 minutes, I passed one of their Coast Guard boats on the way to them. And 2 minutes later, an aircraft, air sea rescue, went in right after them. And I just thought that was terrific. There was no doubt in my mind that they were right on line. But that makes you feel good.
Yeah. Were there any other close calls or times you got hit?
We all had close calls. I lost an engineer that had his hand on my shoulder, and a piece of flak cut his air supply, and he just fell out of the turret up above us, and we couldn't save him. But you lose engines, you lose parts of your planes. It can get pretty messy.
did you think of the plane as a
Oh,
piece of...
for the job, there was never a better plane in the war for 17 for bombing. And it did a tremendous job. The crews were well trained, and I knew at that time, I had thinking about it, that the time would come when they wouldn't need an army, that the Air Force could destroy enough that they reduce the enemy to nothing. And the only reason for an army would be to send in a police outfit to take care of it. And from what has happened here the last 3-4 years, this has definitely happened.
Yeah.
I don't think our army now is anything anywhere near what it used to be.
Did either of you have family back home that married or anything like that during the war?
Not me, I was single,
Yeah. Did you have,
just my family.
yeah. Did you have much contact with them, or?
Oh yeah, I used to write every couple of days. I had 3 other brothers that were in the same time as I was.
Oh, really? That must have been
One in the Navy, one in the Air Force, and one in the Army. He was in a tank division. But, we all came back with nothing. I had one brother, the one in the Air Force. He got hit there, and they went to Switzerland for a duration. But he was home before the war actually ended. He went over there. Outside of that, all 4 of us came back. No
injuries.
No injuries whatsoever.
Ed, you have some family?
Well, I got married after I came back from overseas. And I had a brother that was also in the Air Force. He was not over there though. But I just remembered something that might be of interest. We had glide bombs. These were very heavy bombs, and they put wings and tails on them. And they developed these glide bombs that we could release them about 18 miles from the target. Then we did not have to go over the anti-aircraft. And the raid we first used them on, the whole 8th Air Force went along as our cover. We had quite a few generals along. In fact, the general flew with me. And they had all the fighters the Americans and English had. And we released these bombs about 18 miles from Cologne. And we watched them go in. You could see them hitting. Well, the thing that I have always said about that particular raid, and I'm being a little comical, one of the bombs nicked the 8th wonder of the world, which is the big church in Cologne was called the 8th wonder of the world. And I still claim that it was my bomb that nicked the church. But my mother, I was in contact with my mother during the war, and she would pick out notices in our papers when something happened. And invariably, she picked out one where I was. Now, I mean, there has to be some, I didn't tell her.
Yeah.
Somehow she knew. And she sent me a notation from the paper on that Cologne bombing too. But you gotta have some humor too.
Yeah. Now that your family was in Baldwinsville, or where were they?
No, at that time we lived, my mother had a farm about 6 miles north of Baldwinsville. I grew up in Brooklyn, but we came up and used to come up here summers. But we moved up in '39. And my brother is younger, and he went to Fulton High School.
Okay.
But I moved into Baldwinsville 48. So I've been here quite a while.
And did either one of you get called up again, or were you done after World War II?
Well, when I got out, I stayed in the reserves, and I got called up for Korea, but I happened to be out of town at the time, and by the time I got back home, take a physical and everything, my outfit took off, and they transferred me to a non-ready outfit. I was fortunate I didn't go to Korea.
Yeah.
I spent time in the 17, 18 years in the reserve, and I finally quit after I figured that what I could do, I couldn't fly anymore after that, so I left the reserve. I volunteered for Korea, but they just weren't using B-17s anymore.
Have you flown at all since?
I go up once in a while in one of these little planes, but that's all. My son flies one and has one, and he come up and take me up. I love flying, but it's too expensive.
Yeah, it's an expensive hobby. All right, anything else that you remember that's popped in your head about those days?
I didn't have a very exciting time in the service. I was just one of those way down low persons,
Private.
you know, and just went where they told me, did what I did what I was told, and that was it. I never got into anything heavy or any. The worst part of my old time was in the Battle of the Bulge. That's outside that.
You remember the feelings that, or people talk when the war was over? I mean, remember what you were thinking around that time?
Oh, I don't know. To me, I just took everything right in stride, you know, just the only thing on my mind is when will this ever end, you know. It was just one of those deals. You just, like you went to work every day and, you know, that was it. And it just finally came to an end, you know. You're always waiting for this or waiting for that. We went into occupation after the war ended for a short time there. And we were over in before they split up Germany, we were in the part that was going to go to Russia, and I'll tell you, those German people were in panic then. They didn't like the idea of living in the Russian zone.
And do you remember the end of the war and what?
Oh yes, I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico, checking out on B-29s. And the day that Japan surrendered, the next day I was second man on the list to get out of the service. Actually, they moved me by the end of the week. I was moved back to Atlantic City.
And that was on the points system?
Oh yeah. I had enough points.
Yeah, you went in right after Pearl Harbor, so.
Well, I went in July of 42. July of 42.
Bill, you went in when?
I went in March of 43, so it took me a long. I didn't get out till January of 46 because of my points.
Well, they gave us a lot of points. If you were in combat, you got points.
Yeah, but I mean,
That's where the most points would
like
come
I said,
from.
we were in for 90 days and that was all, you know.
90 days straight, though.
Straight, it was straight.
Yeah.
It wasn't so bad where I was in the artillery. It's the poor infantry guys, you know, they were up there all the time. They were never getting relieved. They were just, the only relief they were getting was new replacements. But it worked out pretty good, though. I mean, I lost a good friend of mine. He was a forward observer. He got killed over there. I had a couple of buddies that I've never seen since then.
I have one thing to add. He hasn't seen too many of his. our group has a reunion every year. I only go about every third one. But our last reunion, which was May, 1st of May or April this year, April, was down in Savannah, Georgia, which was our 50th reunion. And we had over 354 there. So we still have contact.
Yeah.
My old Navigator and Bombardier, I just got a picture of his wife sent us a picture that was taken down at the reunion.
Oh, okay.
They don't look like soldiers to me.
Well, a lot of years have gone by.
Yes.
I got a reunion coming up at the end of September in Louisville, Kentucky, and I'm looking forward to go to that one because one of my very good buddies in the service lives there. And I've met him only once since the war. I think I want to go down and make sure I see him.
Well, I think we'll wrap it up here. And thank Ed and Phil for talking to us, and we'll be back with the next installment.